Welcome to episode 1 of Rocked Like A Hurricanrana. My name's Simon Takla. Joining me on this journey of metal and wrestling is Owen Jones.
How you doing, Simon?
I'm doing very good. Okay, so to get into this, we've got to sort of explain what we're doing. And what we're doing is taking a journey through metal and wrestling, all the times they intersect, because, geez, it feels like the fan bases, the style, the look, there's so many similarities.
Yeah, and as someone who I take photos at both wrestling and metal events, like I've been to both shows. I've been to wrestling shows where people are wearing Killswitch Engage or like local Melbourne band shirts, and I've been to metal shows where people are wearing Triple H or Seth Rollins shirts. Like, so the fan bases intersect, and what we're trying to do here is we are going to pull apart every possible aspect of the intersection and the correlation between heavy metal music and wrestling, and just going to have a good time.
Yeah, they're the two things I love the most. They're the two things I've had the most fun covering in my career, whether it's hosting metal shows locally in Melbourne, getting to cover 2 Wrestlemanias as part of the media.
Yeah.
And you see the similarities. It's dudes with long hair and tattoos. It's violent. It's loud. There is something that ties them together. And over the next few weeks, months, however long it takes, we're going to find every reference that crosses both. We're going to explore both genres separately and, most importantly, when they come together.
And yeah, we should have some very special guests on this podcast as well. We're going to have them come in and talk about their favorite bands, and we're going to pull apart every single thing that is related between a certain band and wrestling. And we're going to talk about them with professional wrestlers, with people in bands, with people related to promoting both. It's going to be a good time.
And that's the thing. We're not just two nerdy fans of 2 separate things who are like, let's just do a show about both.
Yeah, we're heavily involved in both of these things, and I'm super excited to get this going, finally.
Yeah. And just to set the scene of like, not just what we do, but what we like, we want to go through our favorite wrestlers, our favorite bands, and just sort of set the tone of where our fandom lies. And what's cool about this, we haven't even spoken to each other about these lists.
No, we haven't. This is completely secret from both of us. So I'm excited to see what Simon's heavy music taste is like. I know a little bit, but not his top 5.
Okay. So you want me to go first then?
Yeah, you go first, man.
All right. I think I will. We'll start off with music.
Yep.
Top 5 bands of all time. This is the super obvious one. I'm going to start from number 1 just because it's easier. Metallica.
Okay.
The first album I ever bought was the Black Album on cassette.
Wow.
Me and my brother were probably like, geez, I don't know, 5 and 8 or like really, really young. Our uncle got us into it. And I remember it was the first ever noise complaint I got. And I was a little kid. Our next door neighbor was like, keep that down. You're playing the music too loud. And it was Metallica's Black Album.
Well, it's a good album to start with as well.
Yeah. So for me, Metallica was the band, the only band for years. And then from there, the top 4, I don't know if they rank in a particular order.
Yep.
But, so it's Metallica number 1. It's Faith No More. Absolutely love Faith No More. I think as time's gone on, you've seen their influence in so many other younger bands.
Yeah.
You know, from Korn to Limp Bizkit to the Dillinger Escape Plan to Bring Me the Horizon. Any band who's sort of mixing genres of metal, I feel like it all starts with Faith No More.
And even like newer bands in Melbourne, like Ocean Grove, who are doing that like grunge, new metal kind of mix there. I know they've definitely taken influence from Faith No More as well.
Yeah.
So.
And to me, Mike Patton is the number 1 frontman of metal.
Yeah.
Amazing vocalist.
Well, I've seen both of his bands live, so.
Who'd you say? Well, he has like 1 million bands.
Yeah.
Saying you've seen 2. Yeah.
Well, definitely saw Faith No More and who was
Tomahawk.
And when it was Tomahawk. It was Soundwave.
Nice. Okay.
And especially when you've seen as many bands as either of us have, it's one of those, I've seen that band, I just can't remember when. It's like wrestling.
Yeah, it all blurs together if you've seen enough of it.
But I saw Faith No More when they headlined Soundwave the other year, and it was just an experience. It was so special.
So good. So that's number 2 for me. Out of a newer band, and I'm not just putting them in to vary this up, I put Protest the Hero on my list.
Yeah.
For me, I almost gave up on metal, you know, after hosting a show for almost 7 years and having to research, read magazines, go to gigs, blah, blah, blah. Everything was starting to feel the same. And then I heard Sequoia Throne off the album Fortress.
Yep.
And I was like, this is insane. These guys are a little bit different. Absolutely love them. Seen them live twice. One of the best live bands I've seen too.
It was the same for me. Like I was like 16. I was like struggling with like when I was playing guitar heaps at the time. A mate of mine at school was like, dude, you gotta listen to this band. Like they're insane. Played Blood Meat for the first time, and then a couple months later we played at our school talent show. It's got like 50,000 views on YouTube. It's just one, and that was like, geez, like 5 years ago now. So yeah, Protest Hero overall. So that's a pretty cool. That's a good addition to your top 5, Simon.
Yep. And then after that, I'm going to put in Megadeth. I know you can. It's true. You can be a Metallica and a Megadeth fan at the same time.
I am.
For me, even though I don't listen to their whole catalog anymore, there are albums I'll just miss. But for me, if you take Megadeth's absolute best songs, they're as good as anyone's songs.
Definitely. And with Megadeth, like we'll definitely get into this in later episodes, but Megadeth have a wrestling crossover.
They sure do.
They played WCW.
They did play WCW. A few bands did. That's going to be an interesting episode when we take a dive into WCW.
Definitely.
But yeah, Megadeth, Dave Mustaine is amazing. What a crazy dude. I don't agree with him on a lot of things politically or whatever, but what an amazing musician.
Yeah, he's an incredible songwriter as well.
He really
is.
Like
my favorite Megadeth song is Lucretia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting choice. Okay.
Just that's the start guitar lick is just so good.
Yeah.
And there's like the rest of the song kind of, for me, it like holds up that guitar part at the start. It really like makes the entire song sound so good.
Yeah.
Plus, it's like a 5 minute. It's like a 5 minute song that doesn't get boring.
They do that. They're good at that. And yeah, that's an interesting point about Megadeth. They have songs that are between 5, 7, 8 minutes long. They don't feel like they're dragging.
There's some bands that do that, and it's like, okay, this song could have ended like 3 minutes ago.
Yeah. Hangar 18 feels like it's 2 minutes. Holy Wars feels like it's just flying through, even though it changes so much.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, shout out to Megadeth. They're on my list. And then rounding it out is a choice. I feel like they're still metal enough, but Monster Magnet. I absolutely love Monster Magnet. To me, Dave Windorf is the best songwriter and lyricist. I think his lyrics are so funny. There's callbacks to songs that are 10 years old constantly. The weird, stoner vibe, space rock thing mixed in with the sort of cock rock vibe that they sort of started mixing in later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And he's an amazing singer too. I think he has such a great voice.
I'll be honest, I'm not too well versed in Monster Magnet, but like I've heard bits and pieces, and like again, this is like the core of what we're doing. But like, we'll touch on it. But Matt Hardy used a Monster Magnet song.
Yeah,
he used "Live for the Moment" as an entrance song. So there you go.
Live for the Moment is a really cool song, and it's super edited. The version they use in the WWE, it just repeats itself. If you listen to the full song, it is really cool.
It's a great song.
It starts with this great, acoustic bit. It's sort of slow, and then it builds to that loud chorus, which is sort of a Monster Magnet staple. Very good, amazing band.
Yeah, man.
So that's my top 5. It sort of jumps all over the place, but there it is.
Now my top 5. Again, like yours, Simon, it's all over the place because it's just like what I grew up with listening mainly and like what I've grown into. But my favorite band ever is pretty obvious if you know me as a person. Like it's Van Halen.
Yeah.
It always has been. I think it always will be. I got into Van Halen funnily enough through Power Rangers, which is another one of my my main 3 passions alongside music and wrestling. Like Dreams by Van Halen plays in the final scene of the Power Rangers movie, which is really cool when 4-year-old me is listening to it going, oh, that's a cool song. So
see, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Like I watched the movie at the movies, but I guess at the time I wasn't like, hey, that's Van Halen.
Yeah, so 1999, 2000, there's like me listening, oh, that's cool. And then like I found out a couple of years later, like I heard, oh, it's Power Rangers, and then I got back into Van Halen. So I'm not one of those people where I have a certain era of Van Halen that I like because I love Sammy Hagar, I love David Lee Roth. I don't even acknowledge the Gary Cherone part of it's a decent album, but it just doesn't sound like Van Halen in my opinion.
It's not Van Halen.
Because like the Sammy Hagar is still like there's some really like heavy riffing, especially on the 91 album for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. Like, that's some like chunky riffs in there. But I can't get into Sammy Hagar's vocals. I know he's like a better singer than David Lee Roth, but to me the voice is David Lee Roth.
Yeah, well,
with all of his yelps and screams.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And like if you, there's a lot of like isolated vocal tracks of David Lee Roth on YouTube, and it's so awesome because it's just it's just I listen to those more than I listen to Van Halen sometimes. But yeah, it was. Oh, I think it was meant to be like my back patch on one of my patch jackets is like a vintage Van Halen patch. Like they're just one of those bands that I'll never like. I have all of their albums on vinyl. Like I spent 5 years tracking down all their albums on vinyl.
Do you like the last album, A Different Kind of Truth?
I didn't mind it.
I
think it was pretty good. It was one of those like, oh, you don't know, but yeah, I didn't hate it. Like the lead single they released was it sounds like
this is the worst song on it though.
Yeah, but it was kind of like it's like the Hagar era music, but it had decent-ish David Lee Roth vocals.
Yeah.
Like he's lost his chops, but he's still he's off his chops. He's like he's crazy son of a gun, that one. But yeah. So Van Halen are easily like my favorite band. Moving on, like number 2, hands down, Skid Row. Again, like two bands that I've never seen. I will never see like full like incarnations of live. But Skid Row are just one of those bands like. They're glam metal, but they're like really thrash metal as well, and they're super heavy and like on Slave to the Grind. And I think, and like reading like Sebastian Bach's book and like interviews, like he's just like an incredible singer and songwriter. But like they took a lot of blues influence as well, and you can hear that in like Monkey Business and a lot of like the earlier songs too. But yeah, that band is just. Like a lot of songs on like on the first album, the self-titled, I was like, holy shit! Like you can tell why they got big like really quickly as well.
Yeah, the first album is fun, but to me, Slave to the Grind is in my top 5 albums of all time. I think it's classic
as well as mine because it's just like super heavy, but the vocal melodies are catchy, and he's still like because they were writing success off the first album, and then Slave to the Grind goes to number 1 on the billboards when they were on tour with Motley Crue.
Yeah,
at the same time, so it's just like crazy, like how that all goes down. But yeah, that band is just something like with me. I always listen to them. That's the thing with like favorite bands. Like if people are like, oh, they're one of my favorite bands, but like they don't really listen to them. Like I will listen to Skid Row at least once a day.
Wow, that's what it should be, though. Yeah, the bands you go back to the most.
Absolutely, and like
even Subhuman Race is a really underrated album. I think that's really good too.
Yeah, because they just toured with Pantera as well, so there's a little bit of like a sludgier Pantera vibe on that album. And actually, when I took photos of and saw Sebastian Bach in October, he actually played a song off Subhuman Race. He played. Let me think. I've just got to think. Breaking Down. The second was that the main ballad of the album, because obviously Skid Row are a ballad band. Yeah, but yeah, like the main ballad of that album he played, it was second song he played too.
Wow,
second or third song he played.
Cool.
So I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then like he obviously went straight into all the main Skid Row songs. But moving on. Third favorite band is Typo Negative. Like completely different, like early '90s, mid '90s band, I guess. The Skid Row, like your gothic vampire sludge doom metal thing they had going on. But I've only been listening to Typo for about 4 years now. Like not as long as like the other two bands mentioned, but like it's just something about them. Like they take you to a different place. It sounds as like generic as that sounds. It's like you go, like you listen to them and like, oh holy shit, this band's incredible. Like as soon as you listen to them, because like they're heavy, but then there's like because each song goes for like 7 or 8 minutes. There's like each 2 minutes is a chapter, so it goes heavy, and then it transforms into a different genre, and it's really like magical, majestical, and then it goes back into heavy. And a lot of the lyrical topics are really like strange as well, because like Pete Steele was a very like troubled human, so his lyrics are pretty like heavy to listen to. And they have a connection with wrestling, which I'm sure we'll get into in future episodes. They did an unused song for Kane. Yeah,
which I didn't know about until you brought it up very excitedly. So
it's a killer song, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But moving on, like quicken this up. And my other two, like Iron Maiden, like first heavy band first metal band I pretty much ever listened to. Yep. First band I was fully obsessed with. Like I did my end of year project in grade 6 on Iron Maiden.
That's cool.
Full on like. It was like a 30-page binder book on Iron Maiden, like full on, like everything about them, and like got to see them. I've got to see them twice now, but the first time I saw them was like the most emotional 2 hours of my life. I'm like, I can't believe this is actually happening. But yeah, it's just one of those bands. But like, I have a bit of an unpopular opinion. Like, I love Iron Maiden in general. Bruce Dickinson's Iron Maiden is amazing. But my favorite Iron Maiden album was actually Killers.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Paul Di'Anno era Iron Maiden.
I've heard that Axl Rose feels the same way.
Yeah, because
he said the same thing.
I don't know. It's just like because, and it's not to sound like different to everyone else, but it's just like obviously like Bruce Dickinson is Iron Maiden, but you go back and listen to it, and like I think it's because the rawness of Paul Di'Anno's voice kind of makes it a little bit more appealing.
Yeah, he had more of a punk vibe, I guess. Bruce Dickinson brought in that
theatrical
operatic
kind
thing, which did match the music, and they eventually made that Iron Maiden sound. But
absolutely,
I can see why people like it.
And also, they do a killer cover of "Women in Uniform" by Skyhooks.
Oh,
yeah,
I haven't even heard it.
It is absolutely awesome. I'll play it to you later because it is sick.
Yeah.
And when I discovered it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then you listen to it more, like, yeah, it's one of those. They're just one of those bands. Like, I don't listen to them like as much as I listen to Skid Row or Van Halen, but I'll listen to them like, yeah, this band. There's a reason why they got me to heavy metal, and pretty much got everyone else into heavy metal as well.
Yeah, you can't argue with Iron Maiden.
Absolutely,
they're one of those ones. I think if you like any type of metal, surely you like Iron Maiden.
Absolutely. Couple honorable mentions before I finish off my 5. Warrant, amazing band. Janie Lane is an underrated vocalist in my opinion. Parkway Drive.
I do like the song Uncle Tom's Cabin
it's
a lot.
Incredible song. Parkway Drive, like the first metalcore band I listened to. I was like 13. They were the first gig I went to when I was 13.
Wow.
And just one of those bands, like they've shaped a lot of the bands that I've worked with, and some of my old bands that I played in, like the music that we played anyway. But my 5th band that I've included in my top 5 is a Melbourne band called Outright. They're a Melbourne hardcore band. Incredible band. I actually first saw them in 2014. It was 14 or 15. I was taking photos. They played with Bane, American straight edge hardcore band. And I hadn't heard of the band. And everyone's like, "Oh, dude, Outright are sick." And I went there. I took photos because they opened, and I'm like, "This like they walk on stage, and there's like this like little like little stocky like awesome like looking girl Yelena walks on stage. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like female fronted bands are sick." And she rips out some of the most incredible hardcore vocals I've seen in my life. I'm like, holy shit, this is sick. And like, they're very like old school like New York based hardcore, like Sick of It All, bit of like not as much Madable, but a lot of like beatdown kind of hardcore. So really like traditional, I'd say. But like their lyrical topics are pretty hard hitting. Like they talk a lot about like domestic abuse and stuff, which I think is pretty like obviously like being female fronted. They like attack like those issues, which I think is great. But like an underrated band in Melbourne as well, because a lot of like Melbourne hardcore bands like that with Outright, they haven't done a whole lot recently. They have a lot of like lineup changes, but like their 2014 album Avalanche is still like it's always in my top 10. That it's like the perfect mix of like thrash, crossover, beat down, like just like straight up hardcore, and like always gets me pumped, always gets me going. And like whenever I see them live or take photos of them live, it's like one of those bands going, yeah, this is sick. This will always be one of my favorite bands. So yeah, it's a strange little inclusion, but yeah, the band I'll always love, I think. So that's my little like mixed up kind of top 5.
Nice. Goes all over the place, but that's what we're going to do.
Absolutely, man.
Okay, nice. So that rounds out the music side. Now to the wrestling side. Top 5 favorites of all time.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting too. It shouldn't be the top 5 best. That becomes a different argument.
It's our personal favorite.
Okay. Top 5. Again, it's going to sound like an obvious answer. For me, number 1 is Shawn Michaels. As a kid who like grew up in the 90s, for me, when I was 10 years old, Shawn Michaels was the main event guy.
Yep.
And to me, that's like peak wrestling year. If you get into it as a kid, whoever is the main guy, I think at that age, becomes your favorite.
Yeah.
And then the fact that Shawn Michaels got injured just before the Attitude Era. I would have been in like grade 6. Everyone loved wrestling at school.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, I loved Shawn Michaels so much. When Steve Austin beat him for the title, I wasn't like, yeah, go Austin. I love Stone Cold. I was angry.
Yeah.
And upset.
Yeah.
Austin wasn't my favorite through the whole Attitude Era because I was resentful. I'm like, you took out Sean. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel like there's an age gap between us. So you grew up in that era, whereas I was like 2 when that happened. I was like I pretty much missed that entire era of wrestling. So obviously I had to do the whole go. I've had to go back and watch it in my time as a wrestling fan. And yeah, Shawn Michaels is just, he could still have a match right now and he'd still put on an absolute corker of a match.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that at all. And then his second run is as good as anyone's peak.
Yeah.
To return in 2002, to have that few-year run. I've never actually jumped out of my seat at home watching wrestling. The only time I ever did is when Shawn Michaels first came back.
Yeah,
me and my brother literally jumped out of our chairs and high-fived each other. So,
and then the whole run with DX as well.
So fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. Such variety. Shawn Michaels is the absolute best. And then for me, I'd put Undertaker at number 2.
Okay.
Again, another obvious choice, but it's just the time I grew up in.
Yeah, definitely.
And for me, I think he's like, there's no argument. He's the best big man wrestler ever.
Yeah,
no guy over 6'5" who wrestles as a big man is as good as The Undertaker.
And no guy who's over 6'5" should be able to balance on the ropes like he did when he did Old School.
Old School, the suicide dive.
Yeah.
His jumping clothesline. Like the agility he had on top of everything else is amazing. And just the performance of being The Undertaker.
Well, I was just about to say, like, I would have to say that he's probably the best entire package of wrestler of all time. The entrance, the look, the promo skills, unless like he changed gimmick for two to 3 years.
To me, the American Badass was like my favorite. I loved it when he was doing that thing too.
Yeah.
That's when he started incorporating more like technical wrestling or whatever as well, changed his style a bit. He came out to Kid Rock and Limp Bizkit. It was a strange time, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then number 3, again, another obvious one. I'm sorry, but Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
To me, I wouldn't be a wrestling fan if there wasn't Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
You know, watching the old tapes with my grandpa and just... Yeah, and to me, the whole thing about Hulk Hogan not being able to wrestle to me is garbage because no one's ever been able to work a crowd better than Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and...
You know?
Like, as we were saying on the way here, like, people say that, just watch his stuff from Japan. He actually had to wrestle.
Yeah, that too. So if you ever want to make the argument that Hulk Hogan could, you know, have a proper wrestling match, watch his stuff there. It's really good.
His match with the Great Muta is brilliant.
Exactly. He knew the audience he was working to, and that's why he was the biggest star of all time.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and then his heel run in WCW is hilarious. Just the most cartoony, over-the-top bad guy.
Hollywood Hogan.
Yeah.
So good.
Hollywood Hogan was amazing with his spray-on beard and everything else. And then I want to put in Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, whatever you want to refer to him as. He was like the first indie guy that I really thought this guy is amazing.
Yeah.
That got me into watching more of Ring of Honor. Any match I saw of his, blown away. Got to WWF, WWE. What a killer run. And I think there's more to it still. Yeah. But I was there for WrestleMania 30. I know I have to name drop and brag a little bit, but to me, that was the only time I've ever been at a wrestling show where 10 grown men right in the crowd that I was watching it with, when Daniel Bryan won the title, everyone high-fived each other, were hugging each other. It felt real for that moment, and it was insane. Because that long journey to get there with, you know, always being buried and everything else, whether it was on purpose or not, the fact that it ended that way, everyone was completely invested in it, and I've never been at an atmosphere like that.
And also the fact that he was released as well. Like, he was released from the WWE first, went back and did that incredible indie run, then got re-signed, and then he did that massive journey to the main event.
Yeah. Actually, sorry, that's the second time I jumped out of my chair watching Wrestling at Home. When John Cena was like, and the last member of Team WWE, and it was Daniel Bryan, like, returning. Yeah. So rapt that he came back.
Yeah.
And then my number 5 is a hard one because I could rotate different people through this list. It could be Randy Savage, Roddy Piper. I love them growing up. Bret Hart. But I do, even though I said I was shattered that he beat Shawn Michaels, I put Steve Austin.
Okay.
Because for me, the year that I finally was like, I love Steve Austin was 2001. His heel run.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved. His pay-per-view matches that year were, it was like he was working as hard as anyone to sort of prove that he was back from an injury and as good as ever.
Yep.
And then, sort of appreciated everything else. Best all-round wrestler of all time, I would say, if we're saying the best at everything.
Yeah.
Talking matches, promos, presence, blah, blah, blah. but that's the top 5.
Taking a gun to Brian Pillman's house.
Yeah. Stomping a dude in Brian Pillman's little kiddie pool. What a weird segment. So good. Beating up Booker T in a supermarket.
Yeah.
You can put Steve Austin anywhere and it's awesome.
And he's a badass.
Yeah.
So for me, my number one is pretty obvious. Like, I have a tattoo that is dedicated to Edge. Well, Edge and Christian, but like I grew my introduction to wrestling was Edge and Christian, was their tag team run, and that one I'm like, oh, this is so cool. These guys are being idiots and being hilarious, but they're bad guys and they're doing all this incredible stuff in the ring. But then the Rated R Superstar is just, I think, one of the most perfect runs in wrestling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have like, being a photographer, I have a camera on my arm, but around it I have tattooed for the benefits of those with flash photography, because Edge and Christian were just the coolest. And as I said, like, Edge going on, I reckon maybe beside Shawn Michaels was definitely one of the best transitions for being a tag team into a singles wrestler.
Absolutely.
Like, he's held the most championships of all time in, like, collective championships in WWE.
Really?
Yeah. Like, okay. What? 12-time world champion and all the tag team titles and even an IC title run, very briefly. But, he's got the most collective championships, and that's for a reason, because he was just so good. And even with that weird stuff with Vicky Guerrero was kind of strange, but he still made it work.
It was so good. Their weird vignettes in the playground and him swinging her, and then just everything they did was so good too.
Yeah, but like, obviously, like, one of the first times I cried watching wrestling was when he retired.
Oh, his retirement sucked.
And then again, like, I had flashbacks when Daniel Bryan retired. I'm like, I've seen this before, and it killed me. So, like, that was really hard. And, like, it's really funny because Christian isn't in my top 5 as a singles competitor. His singles run was good. His world championship run was still one of my favorites, but he just missed out on my top 5, which is kind of strange. Number 2, I'm wearing his shirt today. Hiroshi Tanahashi, Japanese wrestler. Like, the guy is 41 years old, and he's still putting on some of the best matches you'll see this year. His match recently with Kota Ibushi at Power Struggle was absolutely brilliant. But he's kind of like the John Cena of New Japan. He's been around forever, but he hasn't gotten stale.
No, Tanahashi has chemistry with everyone.
Yeah.
Every time he's in a match, I'm like, I don't know if this one will work, but then it just becomes a Tanahashi match, which is the most epic New Japan style main event.
His 6-month storyline this year, or started last year, with Tetsuya Naito was brilliant.
Yeah,
because the character-driven stuff there was great, and then the 2 matches they had at Wrestle Kingdom and at Dominion were just brilliant. Like, and that was when Tanahashi won the Intercontinental Championship back. I got there in the end.
He's an interesting one too, because even though now New Japan is trendy, everyone loves Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and, Okada, Tanahashi is the guy who sort of got New Japan back to the level where it was.
He's been around for 20 years.
Yeah, and, we all know of Nakamura now, and everyone knows him because he went to the WWE. Tanahashi was the biggest star during that whole run too.
Exactly.
Without Tanahashi, I think a lot of people wouldn't have gotten into New Japan in this, the past 5 years or whatever.
Well, Tanahashi and Nakamura's matches were brilliant.
Oh, so good.
And one of my favorite matches of all time was last year, was Tanahashi versus Okada at G1 in the G1 semi-final.
Yeah.
It's a time limit draw. No one wins, but it was just such a good match. And like the fact that goes for the pin, 1, 2, time runs out, and then he kicks out. Perfect. It's a perfect match in my mind.
Yeah. And also Tanahashi's link to metal. He had Marty Friedman play him to the ring one time.
Goddamn. And he is the rock star. Of, like, they call him the rock star of New Japan. Yeah. He's got his air guitar gimmick that he rocks all the time. And yeah, the Marty Friedman, that's still one of my favorite entrances.
Very cool.
So random, but so brilliant.
So good.
Number 2, Kazuchika Okada. We'll get into this a little bit later in this episode, but we had the pleasure of being in the same room as him the other night at MCW November Rain, and he's just got this presence about him. And just his wrestling, he's like, as I said before with The Undertaker, one of the most perfect package wrestlers. Okada's just the perfect wrestler.
Yeah.
Every move he does look so effortless, but the execution is so perfect.
Yeah, he's the best, and the fact that he's so young and has already had this run, the argument will be made in 10 years that he might be the greatest of all time. And the fact that now New Japan can be watched around the world and wrestling is more international, there's no argument of like, oh, but he didn't make it in the States or internationally. It doesn't matter anymore.
He's wrestled in the States. He wrestled TNA, but he's also like this year they did the Long Beach shows.
What they're doing with Ring of Honor and even just running their own shows in the States. The argument will be made that no, he is on any ranking you want to make.
100%. And like just the fact that like, he turned 30 on like last Wednesday. The only championship he has ever held is the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. It's the only title he's ever held in his wrestling career. He's won it 4 times.
That's big time. That's the biggest time.
It's the biggest time, and like it's the prestige of that championship is huge.
Yeah,
and like he's now he's held it for 500 days. It's just insane, and I get to see him wrestle in January again. I'm so excited. I'll go quick for these ones, but Bret Hart is definitely in my top 5. Like again, like I started watching wrestling. Like, it was like, I started watching wrestling into like 2001, 2002, but like, I had a lot of tapes from my cousin, and a lot of those tapes were Bret Hart tapes. Again, like, technically so sound and so perfect, but like, I kind of, watching it back in recent years, I think what made me fall in love with him was his tag team work as well. Because him and the Hart Foundation was just so good.
Hart Foundation were amazing. They had good matches with everyone. Whether it was the Nasty Boys or whoever, the matches were great.
You were probably lucky enough to see a lot of those matches when they first happened, somewhat.
Yeah, like on video, like new from the video shop. I was, able to see some of them. And like Hart Foundation were cool as shit. They had cool jackets, the sunnies, everything.
Yeah, but like just his singles runs were perfect. Like, and his matches with before the Montreal Screwjob, but his matches with Shawn Michaels were really good, and but especially British Bulldog, like. The WrestleMania match in London. Oh,
the SummerSlam match.
SummerSlam.
Wembley.
Sorry,
That's a fucking great match. So many Brett matches are basically perfect. Like they look. This is what a wrestling match should look like.
Exactly. And like I've read his autobiography twice. He worked. Like obviously he worked really hard to do what he did, and that's what like probably draws me to him as well.
Yeah. I'd give credit to his heel run too.
Yeah.
He gets everyone sort of like, oh, Brett wasn't charismatic or good on the mic. Bullshit. He invented the 30-minute Raw promo.
Yeah.
Like he was the first dude to go out there and just have a mic for like 20 minutes and talk some shit.
And get booed for half of it.
Yep, exactly.
But also like the legendary double turn match. Like he was involved in that, and the way that was executed was so perfect.
It was excellently executed.
Yes. And last one. This is a bit of a weird one. And like there's so many people that like hover in and out of the top 5. Mike Awesome.
Wow.
Mike Awesome from ECW. He was ECW champion. He he just looked like a wrestler. Like he was 6'6", 270 pounds, but all muscle. And like I've only been watching, like obviously I was quite young, like too young to watch ECW when it happened. So watching it back and just seeing the matches he puts on are it's just so good. And like again, he's a big like Undertaker. He's a big guy, but he does suicide dives and like full sentons over the top rope, and he's 6'6".
He's a freak. For whatever reason, it didn't work out for him on a bigger stage.
Yeah,
the weird booking in WCW.
WCW kind of ruined him.
Yeah, if he looked like a main eventer, and he felt weird in ECW because it's like this is a huge guy who doesn't look like them, and it didn't translate. It's such a shame because surely Mike Awesome and Undertaker going, balls out would have been amazing.
Yeah,
just
and
interesting choice though. So many good matches.
Yeah, easily my top 5 favorite matches would be Mike Awesome versus Masato Tanaka from One Night Stand 2005.
Yeah, for that many years later, for them to put on the type of match they were known for, 10 years before, or 6-7 years before that, just insane.
And the sad thing is, he passed away 4 or 5 years later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my very weird top 5, but that's how my mind works, and that's how my taste in music and wrestling is, I guess. Yeah, but now we're going to move into some pretty cool music news. Or heavy music news. Download Festival's coming to Australia. It's coming to Melbourne.
Yeah, for the first time ever, one of the biggest heavy music festivals in the world is coming to Australia. The lineup, I feel, is a little bit divisive. Everyone's sort of, I feel like this is going to... I don't know what the turnout will be for this festival. I don't know what the response will be. Because to me, I wasn't blown away by it. It feels very new metal heavy, which is strange.
Yeah, it feels very like late 90s, early 2000s nostalgia. Like, Prophets of Rage will be cool to see because it's one of those super groups doing the round, and they do play Rage Against the Machine songs, which unfortunately a lot of people my age who have gone through a bit of a Rage Against the Machine phase lately won't ever get to see.
That's true.
But then you got Limp Bizkit who are playing. I saw them at Soundwave, and they put on a great show. So they'd be worth to see because you won't be disappointed if you just want to see Fred Durst be Fred Durst. It's kind of cool. And then you got like the likes of Mastodon, Good Charlotte, which I think is a strange little inclusion.
So
No Effects, which is awesome. I'm a big No Effects guy. But there's a lot of bands that kind of play all of the download festivals. So Gojira, Amon Amarth, Arch Enemy, Sabaton. Like, I'm pretty sure they have some sort of agreement, which didn't really get much of a reaction from Australian fans. But there's a lot of Australian bands, which I think is brilliant for our Australian music scene.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I know you've got Ocean Grove, of course, like North Lane, bands like that. That's kind of cool.
Death metal legends, Psychroptic.
Yeah. To mix the lineup like that, I just feel like people were expecting maybe one sort of heritage band, if it were to be Iron Maiden or Black Sabbath or Metallica or someone.
Yeah, or Megadeth even.
Yeah, even Megadeth, just to have that part of it. I don't know. Oh, okay. And they're saying it's Korn's only Australian show. So I feel like maybe you'd need to do that as a way to draw the tickets there.
But yeah, but we left Korn to last because this is probably where we kind of start doing what we're doing on this podcast. And Korn have a bit of a relationship with wrestling. One of their songs, Never Never, was used in 2013 as the soundtrack to WWE TLC.
Yeah, and the Jonathan Davies, big wrestling fan also.
He's a huge... he's been seen backstage at a lot of NXT events that hit California. But he's a bit of a nerd anyway. He's a massive gamer as well, from what I know. But yeah, he's been seen pictured with Sasha Banks and Shinsuke Nakamura and Byron Saxton. If you want to get photos with the commentators, but,
why not?
But going back to that, back to that song Never Never. It's a song that I didn't really know much of until I heard it on the TLC in 2013. And that's the thing, with wrestling, and again, with Korn, we're using a Korn song, it's one of the, heavy music is one of those things where it brings out, I guess, the brutality of wrestling, having something that's heavy hitting and the scream, some scream vocal. It's kind of oh, this is going to be really cool. And a lot of the time it is used in hardcore stipulation matches or the build up for that.
Yeah, and I've heard some people say it's sort of cheesy that WWE sort of does always go with, metal or hard rock themes for the pay-per-views and even entrance themes, but it just works visually when you have, the promo package.
Yep.
It works with the music.
Well, one of the best promo packages I've seen probably ever was recently at WrestleMania, the Seth Rollins versus Triple H.
With Metallica.
With the new Metallica song.
Yeah, that really worked. It brought the whole feud together. It looked cool, sounded good. It made me like that song more. It was a decent song off the new album, but actually seeing it tied to something, that's as good as a music video.
Yeah, and were you at the arena for this one?
I was.
Yeah.
The crowd was loving it.
Well, they would have, and the whole spectacle, even just watching it on TV, the whole spectacle was pretty cool, and the way he rode down to the ring and on that massive bike.
Triple H does love Metallica too, though, because there was that match against The Undertaker where he came out For Whom the Bell Tolled.
Yeah.
For the start, and then it turned into Motörhead.
Yeah.
What a son of a bitch. His entrance was Metallica and Motörhead. He's yeah, I get both for my entrance.
Because I'm close personal friends with both.
Yeah, how good is that, though? That's as good as it gets if you're a wrestler and you're a metal fan. What a trip for Triple H that must be.
Yeah, a trip for trips. Well, that's the thing. There's just, when it comes to heavy music used as entrance songs, there's some of my favorite entrance songs, some of my favorite songs. years and years ago in Ring of Honor, Roderick Strong used A Victim a Target by Misery Signals, who were very stiff on missing out on my top 5 favorite bands because they're just incredible.
So it's this one that he used in Ring of Honor?
Yeah. He didn't use it for a long time, but again, like as soon when you hear that intro, it's something. Yeah, this is an entrance song. Someone's going to walk out of this, and someone like Roderick Strong is going to kick your head off.
It's funny with Roderick Strong that he's sort of, like a clean-cut looking dude, but his themes are always like metalcore.
Yeah, like well, he also used End of Heartache, and it's by Killswitch Engage, and it's the name of his finisher,
which is so good. I love that.
But then, yeah,
and then it goes from there. If we're going old school too, to me, like I always wonder, did I sort of get into heavy metal as a little kid because I watched wrestling, and it was easier to just accept loud guitars and screaming because, you see wrestlers come out to it all the time.
Yep.
Like for me, hearing a heavy riff for the first time, it might have been this. It might have been the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, and just running down the entrance ramp like you've just you're chasing after a guy who's nicked your wallet.
Exactly. That's what he always looks like. Who took my stuff? And he's just like bolting. Yeah, because as a little kid, not many 5-6-year-olds are going to be like, yeah, I love that sort of heavy sounding music.
Yeah.
But it becomes normal when you watch wrestling.
Well, yeah, like last month when he was at MCW, I was lucky enough to sit down with Matt Cross because he's a massive punk and hardcore guy as well as me. And like he just said, Ultimate Warrior theme is just so primal. And like as soon as that riff kicks in, you're like, holy shit, let's do this. Like, I want to go beat some heads in. I'm going to love this riff because it's like super heavy. Like at the time, it was heavy.
Yeah.
Like, and it mimicked a lot of the metal that was popular at the time.
Yep. Which is another thing we're going to have to explore in another episode. The fact that metal and wrestling have both had their most mainstream success at the same time.
Yeah, that's
From
a whole
late
hour
80s
episode.
and the late 90s. Why did it happen? We'll have to get into that.
We will. And yeah, well, speaking of that, like my introduction again, like to metal was like Black Sabbath and stuff. But when I realized, like wrestling and metal is a thing, like I can like wrestling, I can like metal because they're the same. Was when Edge went to a singles competition.
You know me.
Like, and then the fireworks come up, he comes up, he throws the metal horns. Like, this guy is full on metal, has the massive trench coat. Like, seeing that when I was probably like 8, 9 at the time, 8, 9 or 10, I'm like, this is like so cool. Like, that was when I was impressionable and like starting to listen to like more metal. I'm like, this is cool. Like, my favorite wrestler has a really awesome song as his entrance song, and it's cool and it's heavy.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even before that, for a short time as a singles wrestler, he used Never Gonna Stop by Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad song, and it was okay, but switching to Metalingus just sort of, that even rounded him out too as a character.
Yeah.
That's how important the music is, particularly a song like that made Edge.
And the nice touch as well, like the Think You Know Me, was when him and Christian were doing their little tag stuff at the start of their career.
Yeah.
But like, and Edge has been seen on, like, Edge has popped up on stage with Ultra Bridge when they play Metalingus live very, very rarely, but there's video of it as well, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's another time where wrestling got me into a band. Because before that, when I was young, there were a couple of Creed songs I did like, I'm not going to lie.
My Sacrifice.
My Sacrifice, again, great WWF video package.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's like the pinnacle of packages, that one. Whenever someone like, for instance, Mikey J, who does all the MCW stuff, he's like, I want this to be the My Sacrifice video package. It's like the industry standard, I guess.
Yeah, and there you go. Creed helped set that bar. For me, when Alter Bridge first formed, as strange as it sounds to say now, I was actually like, I don't think I like this as much as Creed, having just heard, whatever first single they put out. But when I heard Metalingus, I was like, holy crap, what are these guys doing? This is amazing. That crazy drum, intro, the way they edit it for Edge's theme and the riffs and everything, that got me into Alter Bridge. And then I bought that first album. There's some damn good songs on it, and they're a great band.
Well, that's the thing, like, usually when like people like chop and change with editing, it's usually pretty dodgy, but the editing in that from like the super heavy start, it seems like before I thought that was the start of the song. Not gonna lie, when I was
So did I.
Yeah,
I was like, that's how the song must start.
yeah, and then like you listen to it, it's like, oh no, there's an entire 2 verses
Yeah.
before it gets to the chorus.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, just a nice little link for all our guitar nerds out there. Creed, Alter Bridge, Mark Tremonti was the guitarist of both bands.
Yeah, for sure. Like that lineup of musicians, people could say what they wanted about them when they were Creed with Scott Stapp. They were always a great band.
Yeah.
And they were younger than people thought. It blew my mind when I started reading about them. They were only in their 20s when Creed was at their height.
Yeah.
For a band that young to have peaked already and then think, what do we do next? Let's form Alter Bridge.
Yeah.
Not go for as commercial and try different things. Alter Bridge are damn good.
Definitely.
Yeah. One of the more iconic ones that isn't by a band that was made in-house by WWE, if we're going to go back to the 80s, has to be Demolition.
Definitely.
I love it. It's not as heavy now, 30 years later. It sounds like, maybe Quiet Riot or Rat or something, but it's awesome.
See, that's the thing. Rat are an incredible band. But it's kind of like a mixture between like Rat and then like ZZ Top, because there's that like slide guitar little like solo. Yeah. So, but yeah, and for how like intimidating Demolition were, perfect song for those guys to walk out to. And they got a crazy manager as well with Mr. Fuji.
Mr. Fuji, just to make it even weirder.
He had his face paint as well, which is cool.
He did.
Living the gimmick.
He lived the gimmick too. He was like, oh, I'll do that too.
Yeah.
It's fine. He's like, I know I'm dressing, in the bowler hat and all that stuff. He's like, put the makeup on. Demolition, another one. As a little kid, it's just normal to you that, of course, guys look like this and that music plays.
Yeah.
It's easier to accept metal and its strange, like quirks. You can buy in if you've already bought into wrestling and vice versa, I think.
Yeah, and I've been to metal shows where someone looks like Demolition Crash. Like,
Just like, oh, yeah, he's got the studs on. Why not?
yeah, he's got the big battle jacket. He's like 350 pounds, and he'll probably beat my head in if I said anything. So
Yeah.
I'll just stay away from him in the pit.
That's it. Okay, and then to round out the first episode is something we're going to do a lot. We're going to take a look at all the times where there's been metal performances at wrestling shows.
Or like heavy rock performances. Like, luckily enough, like, because this certain band played on WrestleMania twice, we're going to look at both their performances. Legendary Motörhead. Everyone knows that they did the theme song for Triple H. So this is the first performance of Motörhead playing the game at WrestleMania 17.
Yeah, some would say infamous performance. Just to refresh your memory, here it is.
Momentarily,
We all go to head.
Undertaker and King.
We're gonna
Undertaker
kick your
Triple H,
ass.
Ready to get it on.
Time to play the game. Time to play the game. So I love the game. And now you made it.
And of course, if you remember WrestleMania 17, Lemmy with no iconic, big mustache.
Yeah, he had a naked face, and it was kind of weird to look back on, because I watched this again last night, and I'm like, I hadn't seen it for a while. I completely forgot that there was no iconic Lemmy mustache there.
Yeah.
But the perfect way to open up a performance. We're Motörhead and we're going to kick your ass. It's so good, and they definitely did.
Oh, they did. Yeah, as a kid watching that, just being a young teenager, thinking, damn, a band can be just this raw sounding live, and it's still awesome. It's not that they're sloppy. That's just how Motörhead are.
Well, that's the thing. I'm definitely it was definitely a highlight, and this is where Triple H comes out and acknowledges Motörhead playing with him. But with this, and this was his very great match with the American Badass Undertaker. It's still a highlight for a lot of people as well. It's still really cool.
Yeah, and something, I haven't seen it in a while, but as I always remembered Lemmy sort of just mucking up lyrics and stumbling through it and it not being that great. But watching it again earlier today to refresh my memory, I was like, this is fine. This is very good.
Well,
it's so weird.
That's the thing. Like, and then like I listened to some of the Motörhead I have on my iPod. I'm like, it just sounds like he makes up the lyrics on the spot anyway. So he could say something completely different. Like, oh no, that's the lyrics. He must say it because it's the lyrics.
Yeah. It's confidence.
Definitely
He's just going to go
confident.
with it. It's Lemmy, you know. Oh, yeah, he probably wrote that. And then a few years later, Motörhead would go to WrestleMania again. They'd get another WrestleMania moment at WrestleMania 21.
WrestleMania goes to Hollywood.
WrestleMania goes to Hollywood. And of course, Triple H. This was like in his time of like having the most epic entrances he could at WrestleMania.
And the most incredible traps and chests I've ever seen on a human being.
Triple H was very well built. And this is full Lemmy. He's got the hat on. He's got the mustache back.
Sunglasses too.
Sunnies too. Ready to rock. And sounding a little different. I feel like they played it slightly like groovier at 21.
Yeah. It just sounds like he's just making up the words in the spot. It's so good.
But they're pretty much the lyrics.
Most definitely.
Yeah. That's just the fun of it. Like, this is a song that was given to him. They recorded it.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I'll do it again. Sure, yeah.
Sure,
I know
why
how to
not?
do it.
I'll take the paycheck.
But it's such a fun riff, and, you know, it's probably one of the most perfect entrances of all time.
Well, I was thinking about this, like, I do love this entrance, and, like, in this particular entrance, this is when Triple H comes out from under the stage and pops up on a platform, and the crowd just loses their mind, which is coming up pretty much right about now, I think.
Oh, there's some pyro,
Yeah,
too.
Pyro picks up, and then Triple H pops
Oh,
out
yeah, on stage.
on stage, rocks out, this is the big gold belt as well. This is
Yeah.
the World Heavyweight Championship belt.
And Triple H at this time was rocking the Lemmy facial hair, too.
Which I think because it hasn't happened for so long, I kind of forgot that Triple H looked like the absolute badass with the hair and just the stash, because now he's bald with a beard.
Yeah, it's a different look.
Yeah.
But Triple H looked like, he was like, what if Lemmy was jacked?
And blonde.
Yeah, blonde.
But, yeah, like, the thing is, like, I do love that entrance song. It's such a good entrance song, but it's not my favorite Motörhead entrance song. I'm a big fan of the Evolution entrance song.
Oh, yeah, Line in the Sand. That's a
Yeah.
good song. Phil Campbell's guitar work in that song is really cool, too. He's
And-
just like going off the whole
Well,
time.
the thing is, like, they weren't, like, Motörhead didn't write those songs, because they also did, like, the King of Kings one. Like,
Which is good, too. Very good.
yeah.
I like King of Kings.
Like, obviously they would give, like, Jim Johnston wrote these songs, and, like, they put a Motörhead spin on them. Obviously, entrance music is important to any wrestler, because it kind of shapes, like, the way people perceive you as you walk through the curtain. But it's just something about, like, heavy music that kind of makes it a little bit more powerful.
Yeah, and Triple H is the perfect example of that. And then when you see it done with the live performances at those two WrestleManias, like to an extent it did with Edge, but with Triple H, Motörhead is now tied to him forever.
Yeah.
The merchandise he had at the time, that was almost Motörhead influenced
Very.
too. The Iron Cross as well, which Motörhead used in their, imagery as well.
And, like, there's the skull.
Yeah.
Like, he has the skull drawing. It looks like the Motörhead, the hog dog thing. Yeah.
So the logos, the merchandise, and then, of course, the mustache, the entrance. Without Motörhead, is there the best version of the game? Probably not.
No, I definitely not. I feel like, it's definitely like without Motörhead, there probably wouldn't be a Triple H.
Yeah, you hear that, it's time to play the game, shit's on, it's Triple H. He's violent, he's angry, just like Motörhead.
Yeah, and like, even though like especially like with the DX, like Triple H had some pretty killer entrance songs, being with DX or...
Has anyone had better entrance themes than Triple H?
Is
I
that-
think the argument's there. 3 Motörhead songs and the DX song.
Yeah.
Damn.
I don't think so. Like, and he walked to the ring with the Metallica song at WrestleMania.
Yeah, when he was really pushing it, he's like, I'm going to have For Whom the Bell Tolls, that's going to go into Motörhead.
Yeah,
So
like,
sick.
It's as I said before, when you got friends in high places, you can do whatever the fuck you want, really.
Yeah, that's it. And there you go. On that note, with Motörhead, with Triple H.
It's a very metal and very wrestling way to finish a metal and wrestling podcast.
Yeah, and we're going to do this every week. We hope you join us. Things are going to change, though. This was just to give you an insight on what we are, what we're going to be doing, all the touches of metal and wrestling. We're going to have some guests coming up too.
Yeah, next time we'll see you next time, and we're going to rock you like a hurricane runner.